Snow fell in thick, punishing waves, swallowing the distant outlines of faded wagon train. Amid swirling white drifts, the cold wind carried the silent echoes of desperation and abandonment. A small figure, fragile as a wilting flower under winter's harsh embrace, lay motionless on the icy ground. This child, no more than 8 years old, had been cast aside, deemed too sick to jeopardize the journey of desperate souls seeking a new beginning on the Appalachian frontier. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches your heart, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've got something extra special saved just for you. In the twilight of an overcast sky, the child's pale face was barely visible beneath a tangle of matted hair. Her eyes, wide with a haunting mixture of fear and a longing for comfort, gazed unseeingly at the snow. The wheezing breaths of her small body, labored and ragged, mingled with the low moan of the wind, each exhalation reminiscent of a frail candle flickering in a storm. The stench of damp pine needles and the metallic tang of blood from a small cut on her cheek were the only testimony to the life that still struggled within her. A short distance away, the faint crunch of boots on hardened frost announced the arrival of one who had felt destiny calling him through that relentless winter. Kadek, a solitary Shawnee warrior in his early 30s, moved with measured caution. The scars on his face and hands spoke of battles fought and regrets carried in silence, a lifetime of solitude, tempered by honor and sorrow. Clad in a weathered buckskin tunic and carrying a handmade tomahawk that had seen many winters, he surveyed the desolate scene with a quiet intensity that belied his turbulent inner world. Kadek's eyes, dark and reflective as a midnight lake, immediately caught sight of the abandoned child. His breath, a steady plume in the cold air, slowed as he knelt beside her. The child's trembling form stirred his heart, an echo of memories he had long buried. In his past, woven into fabric of distant regrets and stolen moments, lay a tender promise once made, a promise that he might never again feel at peace until it was fulfilled. As his fingers, rough yet gentle as the callous hands of a long-traveled warrior, brushed away a strand of snow from the child's tiny brow, he sensed that fate had drawn him here. Perhaps this child was more than an orphaned soul. She was a living relic of a love lost in the maelstrom of frontier injustice. The child's eyes fluttered open briefly, offering a fleeting glimpse of trust and an unspoken plea for salvation. Though barely coherent, she murmured a soft, desperate sound, a sound not of this cruel world, but a long-forgotten lullaby. Kadek, his heart heavy with the weight of his past, felt the stirrings of protectiveness deep within. In that silent communion beneath the gray sky, an unspoken pact was forged. Here, in this wilderness, where the elements roar with unbridled fury and life was a constant gamble with death, a warrior chose to bear the burden of life deemed insignificant by those who traversed the wagon trails. As the winter wind gusted in a symphony of ragged sounds, Kadek wrapped the fragile child in a rough but warm fur cloak he had carried for such unforeseen moments. The cloak, a handmade token of his tribe's ancient rites, carried the faint aroma of sage and sweetgrass, sense of healing and renewal cherished among his people. His gloved fingers fumbled with the fastening of the cloak around the child's small figure, mindful to shield her from the merciless sting of the biting cold. Every step Kadek took away from the wagon train's encampment was a step into a realm where the lines of destiny and burden blurred. His journey now held two fates, his own, tethered to memories of a lost love and the primacy of a duty reborn, and now the child, whose life might yet be saved if guided with care through these frozen lands. The abandoned wagon train, now a distant echo behind him, had left more hidden scars than merely the absence of a sick child. It was also a painful reminder of the callousness bred by survival instincts in an unforgiving world. Yet Kadek's choices were not dictated by the cruelty of the Commonwealth nor by the harsh edicts of frontier expediency. They were his own, born of intuition and compassion. The surrounding wilderness, bitter and relentless, seemed to hold his breath as Kadek began his solitary trek through towering pines and over drifts of uncompromising snow. The silence between the gusts of wind was punctuated by the rhythmic crunch of his boots and the child's feeble breaths, harmonizing into a dirge of hope and peril. As he navigated the icy trails, Kadek's mind wandered to the ominous legends whispered amongst his people, tales of divine commission from the spirit world, where a child's life symbolized a necessity for redemption and the renewal of broken bonds between peoples divided by blood and belief. In the child's fragile grasp lay a subtle clue, a small, intricately carved token tucked beneath a layer of ice that had somehow clung to her fur. The token, a miniature effigy of a hawk with outstretched wings, resonated with an almost hypnotic familiarity for Kadek, a rarity that linked her fate to something buried deep within his past. Night began to coalesce with the fading light, and as starlight pierced the inky veil above the snow, Kadek paused on the crest of a frost-covered ridge. He knelt once more, this time to inspect the tiny carved token that had miraculously remained intact despite the harsh elements. The intricate lines of the hawk's form, meticulously etched, spoke in silent riddles of long-held secrets and love that transcended the mortal coil. His hands trembled ever so slightly, not from the cold but from the weight of the revelation that stirred within him, a connection he could neither deny nor fully comprehend. Before he could ponder further, a sharp, unexpected sound, a rustle in the nearby thicket, shattered the solemn quiet of the snowy expanse. Kadek's instincts flared with caution as he slowly rose to his full, imposing height. The rustle echoed again, crisp as the snap of brittle twigs underfoot. The night, heavy with portent, seemed to conspire with the wind in a foreboding whisper, suggesting that their isolation might soon be shattered by more than just the elemental chill. The child stirred in his arms, her tiny form huddled against the weight of his protective embrace. In that fraught moment, with his mind engulfed in memories and his heart racing with both hope and dread, Kadek felt the searing edge of destiny poised to cut deeper than the biting cold of the winter night. Was it merely a curious animal drawn to the scent of fur and warmth, or had the rustling been a harbinger of a new threat? Something tied to the looming prejudices and ancient enmities between settlers and native peoples alike? Kadek's eyes scanned the darkness, every sense alight with the possibility of imminent danger. With the carved token still nestled in his hand, he realized that this puzzle was more intricate than he had first imagined, a mystery bearing the weight of histories and the promise of lost connections. And as the forest shadows thickened, blending with the distortions of memory and myth, Kadek resolved to safeguard the child at all costs. His next steps would not only determine the fate of a forsaken soul on the brink of death, but might also unlock a secret buried in the annals of his own troubled past. The cold night had just begun its congregation of whispers and warnings, and with his heart pounding like a distant drum of war, Kadek tightened his grip on the child, and on the enigmatic token that now pulsed with a life of its own. A low, almost inaudible sound emanated from the darkened forest, a sound that seemed to carry a warning, or perhaps an invitation, to step deeper into fate's uncertain realm. In that suspended moment, all was uncertain as the frontier itself held its collective breath, awaiting the next twist in the tale of a child abandoned and a warrior fated to rescue her. The delicate balance of hope and despair hung precariously between the falling snowflakes, each one a silent witness to the promise of redemption yet to be fulfilled. The rustling in the thicket, which had sent a shudder down Kadek's spine in the biting cold, soon revealed its true nature. From the shadows emerged not an enemy but alive, alert Shawnee scout named Miko, his eyes reflecting both caution and concern. He motioned silently for Kadek to lower his gaze. The scout's presence was a welcome reprieve from the tension, a quiet confirmation that the menace was not immediate, though the frontier's dangers never truly faded. Miko's hushed warning about a small band of settlers loitering near the camp sent ripples of apprehension through Kadek's careful composure. The wildness of the land, he knew, was fraught with not just the fury of nature, but also the unpredictable cruelty of men. With the threat temporarily abetted by Miko's stealthy intervention, Kadek tightened his grip on the fur cloak swaddling the fragile girl. Even now, as the wind whistled through bent pines and the snow murmured secrets of the woods, he needed to seek sanctuary. Miko led them through a maze of snowy trails to a hidden Shawnee encampment cradled by towering cedars and flickering embers. The camp was a modest cluster of hide tents and simple lean-tos, where smoke curled from communal fires and the aroma of slow-cooked venison mingled with the sharp tang of juniper. Kadek's steps, measured yet urgent, carried him inward, with the child shrouded in both protection and need. Her inhalations were shallow, and her small body shuddered with fever-induced tremors, as if each breath were a plea for reprieve from relentless suffering. As they approached the refuge of the camp, murmurs of curiosity and caution rippled among the gathered Shawnee. Kadek's reappearance with a stranger, one so delicate and mistreated by fate, was met with muted whispers and guarded glances. Among the circle of gathered warriors and elders, a nod of reluctant recognition stirred. The elders' eyes, aged and knowing, flickered as they recognized an anomaly, a child whose presence defied the brutal logic of survival on the frontier. But they also tasted the bitter tang of prejudice. Fear mingled with compassion when faced with a person of settler stock, or so the murmurs speculated. Inside a central shelter woven from animal hides and softened by well-worn blankets, Kadek laid the child on a rough-hewn bench. The air inside, warmed by the glow of a central fire and scented with herbs hung to dry, offers stark contrast to the external desolation. An elder named Dewan, a man whose weathered face betrayed decades of life and loss, stepped forward with measured steps. His eyes scrutinized the child, lingering on the tiny carved hawk token still clutched in her fur, its intricate lines catching the firelight. "She bears the mark of storms past," Tawan murmured, half in warning and half in wonder. His voice echoed in the quiet space, as if summoning ancient memories. Kadek, still battling the tide of his own mixed emotions, nodded silently, his gaze drifting to the token that now pulsed like a fragile heartbeat in his hand. A bead cord, wound tightly around a small, polished stone, had been passed down among his people, an emblem of reverence for guidance and renewal. As he recalled long-forgotten days when his heart had known tenderness and hope, the memory took shape in fleeting images. The soft laughter of beloved, the tender moment when they exchanged tokens of trust beneath a sky ablaze with twilight. In that memory, the hawk, a proud, soaring bird, had been more than a creature of the wild. It was a symbol of love, sacrifice, and a promise broken by forces beyond mortal control. Miko's words, delivered in a tone as clear as the winter stream, reminded Kadek of the duty that now towered above his personal reminiscence. "We must tend to her fever," the scout advised in the hushed cadence of the camp. "Willow bark and wintergreen leaves steeped in warm water. They bring solace when the fever burns too hot." With no time to spare, Kadek and Tawan gathered the necessary herbs, their hands delicate and reverent, as if handling relics of both nature and hope. The brewing of the remedy was a ritual in itself. The crackle of fire softened by the rhythmic stirring of the herbal kanji, and the scent of bitter willows slowly intermingling with the sweet odor of wintergreen. It was these small acts of healing that stitched together the torn fabric of lives on the barren frontier. In the quiet aftermath of the remedial ceremony, as the girl, now murmuring soft, nearly forgotten lullabies, settled amidst the gentle clamor of cared-for souls, Tawan let slip her name. "Lena," he whispered, the name rolling like a prayer upon his tongue. The simple utterance carried weight beyond measure, for in many whispered legends among the Shawnee, the name Lena was spoken of as a beacon, a child who might mend broken bonds between feuding worlds of fate so decreed. Hearing this, Kadek's heart galloped in a bittersweet cadence, each beat a reminder of promises and regrets long harbored beneath the surface of a stoic exterior. Yet, as Lena's small body began to stabilize, the camp's atmosphere remained taut with unease. Several of the elders exchanged gravely concerned glances. Unspoken doubts festered about her lineage and the circumstances of her abandonment. A hushed debate rippled among the gathered. Some whispered that her appearance might summon the wrath of ancestors, serving as an omen of discord between the Shawnee and the encroaching settlers. Kadek, standing at the fringes with a hawk token nestled in his palm, felt the twin fires of indignation and sorrow. His own past, a tapestry woven with love lost and misbegotten choices, played once again before him like a silent film. The memory of a tender evening, when his beloved had given him that very token with heartfelt words of promise and hope, resonated in a voice now nearly a whisper. Guard it well, for even in the harshest storms, love endures. It was in that moment that Kadek wondered if fate had delivered Lena not by chance, but by design, a fragment of lost past reaching into the present to demand reckoning. The ceremonial fires in the camp burned down to a gentle glow, mirroring the quiet urgency in the hearts of the gathered Shawnee. While Miko kept a wary watch at the perimeter, Kadek gently cradled Lena as Tawan sat opposite him, the ember light etching deep lines on his ancient face. Overhead, the stars began their silent vigil, each one a witness to the promises whispered by the wind. In their shared silence, the delicate symbolism of the hawk token and the newly invoked legacy of Lena filled the void, suggesting that destiny's tapestry was far from unwoven. Yet, even as the camp settled into a fragile peace, a new tension crept into the room. An elder with eyes as cold and piercing as the winter air, Noka, known for her unyielding spirit, rose with measured resolve and addressed the assembly. There's an omen in this child, she intoned, glancing at the halting flame of a nearby fire and then back to the hawk token. This sign, reminiscent of what was once lost, may carry within it old vows of sorrow and redemption. We must proceed with caution, lest the past demands reckoning upon us all. Her words, though laden with the wisdom of years, struck a chord of unease in both Kadek and the camp. The weight of her warning blended with the fragrance of the healing herbs and the bitter memories that played out in silent recollection. Kadek's heart beat with a fierce protection, a resolute promise that he would not let the prejudices or fears of his people endanger Lena. Yet, the uncertainty of the token's significance and the possibility that a remnant of his own long-buried past might be stirring in this young child left him suspended between hope and trepidation. Outside, the wind had resumed its restless cadence, as if echoing the unresolved questions that haunted this night. In that fragile interplay of guarded hope and somber caution, Lena's fever began to climb once more, her small body racked with renewed tremors as if in silent protest against fate itself. In the quiet moments that followed, as Miko's eyes darted anxiously toward the darkened tree-line, and the elders murmured amongst themselves, Kadek's resolve deepened. With Lena gently cradled against his chest and the hawk token warm in his hand, he vowed silently that come what may, he would traverse every peril the frontier could muster to unearth the secret tethering their souls. The night, brushing away any vestiges of calm, bore witness to both the fragility of life and the quiet, determined spark of redemption. Lena's small whimper cut to the subdued murmur of the camp, a delicate, persistent note that promised a continuation of a journey steeped in mystery, ancient vows, and the unyielding hope of a new dawn. And as the stars blinked knowingly overhead, the encampment waited with bated breath, poised on the edge of revelation and danger, their fates and ancient legends intertwined in ways yet to be fully revealed. The camp stirred in the pre-dawn chill as the first hazy light crept between the cedar boughs. Lena's fever, which had threatened to plunge her into a deeper stupor, now showed signs of easing, if only marginally, after the tribe's cedar smoke cleansing ritual. In a quiet clearing near the heart of the camp, Tawan and a handful of elders gathered around a low-burning fire. Soft wisps of fragrant cedar smoke curled upward, mingling with the chill air and the rhythmic, almost hypnotic cadence of whispered prayers set against the distant crackle of frozen snow lent a moment an almost sacred quality. Kadek knelt beside Lena, whose face was pale but now calmer, her breathing more measured after the ritual's ministrations. The ritual, an age-old practice passed down through generations of Shawnee, invoked the cleansing power of cedar to draw away the fever's fiery grip. The scent of burning cedar sealed the promise of hope in the heavy air, a promise that life, even in the harsh wilderness, could be tended like the embers of a cherished fire. As Tawan sprinkled delicate herbal ash over Lena's brow, the former warrior silently watched over her, his eyes reflecting both relief and the ever-present weight of questions yet unanswered. In that silent vigil, Kadek's gaze fell upon the hawk token still cradled in his rough, callous hand. The intricate carving shone dimly in the firelight, its symbol stirring more than just a flicker of recognition. Tracing the worn grooves with a trembling finger, he recalled a single, resplendent memory. A memory of a warm summer evening beneath a tapestry of star-studded sky, when a gentle laugh and the soft murmur of promised dreams had filled his heart with hope. It was then that Lena, his beloved and once confidant, had pressed a similar hawk token into his hand. Her whisper, a vow left on the wind, had been a benediction against the tide of misfortune. Let our love be the guide in the storm. Now, decades later, that sacred name resurfaced like an echo from another life. The familiar curves of the carving seemed to hint at an inscription, almost invisible by design, that might spell out a name or a date, a relic of a past that refused to be forgotten. Within the camp, Lena stirred as her fever began to relent, a whisper of a smile briefly softening her troubled features. The child's faint humming, a lullaby she'd once murmured in times of both joy and despair, filled the quiet space, intertwining with the crackle of cedar and the murmur of prayers. This gentle sound was a reminder to Kadek that even in fragility, hope could manifest. Nearby, a young tribal child named Tala approached timidly, her inquisitive eyes filled with compassion. Tala, barely a whispered youth herself, extended a small bundle of woven fibers, a delicate band crafted during a quiet afternoon of learning and play at the encampment's fringe. With careful movements, she draped the modest woven band over Lena's tiny wrist. It was a token of acceptance, a means to ease this child into a community that both nurtured and guarded its own. Tawan's voice broke the silence then, low and calm, yet resonant with authority. "The healing winds have worked for now," he intoned, glancing between Lena and Kadek. "Her spirit is like that fragile song of the morning, the promise of a day yet to come." His praise soothed the part Kadek that had long endured solitude and regret. Yet, in his measured tone, an undercurrent of urgency remained, a reminder that the path ahead was paved with uncertainties. At that moment, Miko emerged from the shadows of a cedar grove. The loyal scout's eyes were fixed on a set of fresh, distinct tracks in the soft, powdery snow near the edge of the camp. They were not the tracks of a wandering wolf or a native creature at ease with their territory, but those of settlers, men and perhaps women driven by desperation and greed. Tracking whispers of a wagon train's lost burden. Miko's voice, barely above a breath, carried the weight of impending danger. "Our quiet is compromised," he murmured, his words slicing through the crisp air. "I have spied tracks. They are deliberate and heavy, as if they are hunting for something valuable." This revelation sent a shiver through Kadek, despite the waning chill. The settler's presence reminded him of a world that never forgave and rarely understood. Their suspicion, their relentless drive to claim what was not theirs, had been the cause of so much sorrow. Yet, it was also a world that might hold the answers to Lena's origin, a piece of the puzzle that had haunted him since the day he found her lingering in the snow. In his heart, the realization began to crystallize. Perhaps the clue lay not only in the hawk token, but also in the lore of the settlers and the fragments of truth whispered by ancient maps and old family tales. As the camp moved into a cautious but determined rhythm following Miko's warning, Kadek retreated with Lena into a sheltered tent-like structure fashioned from hide and woven fibers. Inside, the warmth of a small, carefully tended fire starkly contrasted with the bitter night outside. Cradled in his arms, Lena's soft snoring applauded a tentative recovery, her small form a vulnerable beacon amid hardship. Kadek's mind wandered back to that luminous memory of Lena, of how love had once promised deliverance from the unyielding quiet of regret. Her name echoed softly in his heart, a siren call that urged him onward even as the threat of the encroaching settlers loomed large. He unfastened the hawk token from his grip to examine it in the fire's glow. A nearly imperceptible inscription began to reveal itself as a flickering light danced over its surface, a series of symbols that might be read as dates and names. His breath caught as he realized that beneath one of the emblematic wings lay a tiny engraving, a Lena. The discovery was a balm and a burning brand at once, a confirmation that Lena's fate would irrevocably intertwine with his lost love, yet also a mystery that demanded further exploration. Outside, the wind howled like a plaintive specter, carrying with it the scent of cedar mixed with an acrid tang unfamiliar to the camp. Kadek's thoughts turned to the possibility of a haven where answers might reside, a settlement or trading post known to harbor both settler records and native oral histories. Perhaps, beneath the rigid boundaries forged by prejudice and hardship, lay a trace of Lena's kin, or at least the key to deciphering the mystery of her arrival. Determined to seek that elusive truth, Kadek resolved to prepare for a journey at first light. He would tread the perilous paths between the sheltered safety of the camp and the unknown realm of a settler settlement. His commitment burned as fiercely as a tiny flame in the tent, a promise to Lena and to his long-buried memory of Lena. Meanwhile, as dawn's gentle glow crept over the horizon, life in the camp began its slow dance with destiny. Tala and a few other young children ushered Lena out to a cleared space where they would demonstrate simple weaving techniques, a small, quiet lesson in community and healing. In their innocent chatter and delicate, purposeful threading, Lena found a tentative belonging. That simple act of learning, her small fingers guided by those of eager peers, contrasted sharply with the hardened legends of survival that the elders often recited. Here, in the heart of recovery, play and learning became acts of defiance against the harsh tapestries of the past. Yet, even amid these whispers of hope, the threat Miko had forewarned lingered like a dark specter in the periphery. Near the edge of the camp, fresh tracks in the snow continued their silent testimony to the settlers' clandestine approach. The settlers' steps were confident, their presence calculated, and as Kadek gazed out from the camp's wooden palisade, the persistent, almost deliberate crunch of boots on crusted snow sent an undeniable chill through his bones. Sitting beside him, Tawan placed a steady, reassuring hand upon his shoulder. "The path you choose is fraught with peril, Kadek," the elder said softly, his gaze distant yet empathic. "But sometimes the burden of the past must be met with the courage of renewed hope. Seek the truth of her origins, and let not our suspicions mend your heart with regret. Yet remember, the winds of change may bring both salvation and sorrow." Kadek nodded slowly, absorbing the gravity of Tawan's words. The rising threat, the delicate healing of Lena, and the newly revealed inscription created an intricate tapestry of duty, loss, and love that he could not ignore. With the woven band on Lena's wrist as a symbol of the tribe's gentle embrace, a tangible promise that she was now part of something larger, Kadek felt both solace and urgency. The future awaited, not just for Lena but for him, in equal measure. As the first light of dawn merged with the lingering darkness, Kadek resolved that the journey would soon begin, one that would cross bitter frozen trails and lead into a world where the echoes of a lost love still stirred. Outside, the faint sound of approaching footsteps tugged at his vigilance, a subtle, ominous reminder that every revelation bore its own price. The ember light of the camp flickered as if in silent warning, urging him onward into the uncertain tapestry of life. In that hushed twilight moment, with Lena resting peacefully against him, Kadek's heart and mind aligned. Tomorrow, he would follow the trail, both literal and symbolic, etched by the clandestine script on the hawk token, and perhaps find the answer to the name that had haunted him for so long. Lena, the quiet murmur of a distant, unseen force, the soft cadence of Lena's lullaby, and the intricate dance of light and shadow all whisper that destiny was already at the door. And as the first resolute steps of dawn beckoned, Kadek gazed beyond the palisade, where the faint traces of invaders marked the snow like an omen. In that charged moment of fragile hope and unanswered questions, his resolve steeled for the long journey ahead. A journey where love, loss, and redemption entwined the untamed heart of the Appalachian frontier. The crunch of boots on frozen snow, echoing like the measured beats of an uncertain drum, signaled that the threat had come to fruition. Kadek, still cradling the healing form of Lena in his arms, peered through the latticework of pine boughs that bordered the Shawnee camp. The early light revealed a small patrol of settlers advancing cautiously toward the encampment, a band of figures cloaked in suspicion and determination. Their formations were deliberate, faces set beneath furrowed brows, with one among them, a grizzled settler with a weathered trickhorn, clearly leading. The contrast between the settler's hard-edged resolve and the soft vulnerability of the camp struck Kadek with quiet dread in that charged moment. As the wind whipped flurries across the snow and the scent of damp earth mingled with smoke from the campfire, Kadek's heart pounded like distant war drums. He knew that these newcomers harbored not only the intent of plunder and claim, but also the weight of lingering prejudices. The possibility that they had heard rumors of a lost child, one said be of both settler and native blood, was enough to kindle a dangerous greed. With a steadying breath, Kadek rose, slipping away from the communal circle where the elders still conferred in guarded whispers. Lena's small hand tightened in his as he stepped lightly into the thinning light, determined to confront this threat before it could unravel the fragile harmony of the night. Hidden behind a stand of snow-dusted cedars, Kadek moved with practiced stealth. Miko, ever watchful, joined him, his eyes scanning the horizon with a careful urgency. "They seek another prize," the scout murmured, voice low as crushed leaves. "Or perhaps they know of a bounty to reward the capture of a child who might be a symbol of mixed blood." His tone was grave, a reminder that the frontier was no place for sorrow or hesitation. With Lena shielded beneath his sage-scented cloak, Kadek stepped into the clearing where the encroaching settlers had gathered near the broken edge of the camp's palisade. A tense silence fell as the settlers caught sight of Kadek. The grizzled leader stepped forward, his fist resting on the worn hilt of a flintlock. "What business have you with our frontier?" he demanded, voice rough as the gravel underfoot. His gaze swept over Kadek, lingering on the fur-clad child cradled protectively in his arms. "That child, she belongs to someone. We've heard word of a lost offspring whose kin is to be claimed for the reward promised by the governor." His accusation cut through the cold air like a shard of ice, and the gathered men murmured in agreement. Kadek's gaze softened as he looked down at Lena, whose eyes, though fevered, bore the innocent brightness of one who had yet to know the world's cruelty. "She is no prize," Kadek stated, voice measured but resolute. "She is a living testament to promises made and love once shared. Her blood is neither here for your reward nor for your claim." The words, heavy with denial and the weight of past pain, hung suspended amid the swirling snow. A murmur of discontent rippled from the settler band. The leader's eyes narrowed, and for a moment there was a tension that crackled with the possibility of violence. But before his flintlock could be raised a fraction higher, a shout came from behind them, a call in broken language, laden with equal parts desperation and authority. One of the younger settlers, eyes brimming with a mix of fear and duty, pointed toward the distant cluster of log cabins and a modest trading post nestled against a rise. "There, Captain, the settlement master awaits with further orders. We must not tarry near the tribe's fire." That diversion, though brief, allowed Kadek to withdraw Lena from the clearing under the pretext of securing her safety within the camp. The settler patrol dispersed, their harsh words echoing as a promise of return, while the leader's glare followed Kadek, muddying the boundary between enmity and reluctant pity. The threat was not fully abated, but the immediate confrontation had been defused, at least for one more night. In the wake of the encounter, the camp stirred with a new urgency. Tawan's wise eyes met Kadek's as he approached the fire where the elders were gathering. "The land's whispers warn us of more than shadows," Tawan said softly. "The settlers are not merely after a bounty. They seek a symbol of division to deepen the wounds already inflicted by centuries of strife." Noka's austere visage, still marked by the night's foreboding, softened slightly as she noted the storm of emotions swirling in Kadek's gaze. Their debate churned like the winter wind, balancing hope against the cruelty of human greed. But amid the tensions, a new clarity emerged in Kadek's mind, a resolution that would guide him henceforth. The survival of Lena, this child whose life was illuminated with echoes of lost love, depended now on seeking out the answers hinted at by the hawk token. The inscription, Lena, burned silently within him, urging him to journey beyond the relative sanctuary of the camp. The path ahead lay through a treacherous winter, over icy rivers and snow-laden trails, toward a trading post reputed to be a bastion of scatter hope, where both settler records and native oral histories mingled. It was there, he resolved, that he might finally encounter the elusive figure, a Lena, the woman whose name was so indelibly entwined with his own soul. That night, beneath a sky punctured with shimmering stars and the quiet murmur of distant ice cracking, Kadek and a small contingent of trusted companions, Miko and a few elders who believed in the promise of redemption, prepared for departure. Tawan offered a final blessing, his voice imbued with ancient power. May the river of life guide your steps, and the spirits of the cedar grant you strength. Noka, though her features remained stern, bestowed a silent nod that spoke of cautious hope. In their departure, the camp seemed to lose a part of its fragile innocence, even while Lena remained cradled against Kadek's chest, a slumbering beacon of light in the darkness. The journey began with the relentless howl of a winter storm. The wind shrieked around them as they traversed the icy banks of a fast-flowing river, its surface broken by sheets of frost that glinted treacherously under the feeble glow of a hidden moon. Kadek led the way, his every step measured and sure despite the biting cold. Lena awoke briefly during a pause along the riverbank, her eyes blinking in the pale twilight. In a moment of lucid wonder, she reached up and pulled from beneath her cloak the woven band once given by Tala, a symbol of belonging that now served as both comfort and promise. Her small fingers traced the intricate patterns, and in that whispered gesture, the silent lullaby of a past era resurfaced, a melody that resonated deep with the echoes of her lineage. As snowfall intensified, the journey grew perilous. A creaking of frozen ice beneath their boots mingled with the sound of rushing waters, each step a testament to their determination to reach the distant trading post. The settlement, with its log cabins and smoky lanterns, emerged like a dim mirage against the white wilderness, a beacon of civilization and, perhaps, a chance at reunion. Every so often, echoes of the settler patrol's threat haunted Kadek's thoughts, yet they pressed on, driven by an unspoken promise that the truth would be revealed soon enough. Hours later, as the storm abated into a mournful drizzle, the small party finally crested a ridge overlooking the trading post. It was a humble congregation of weathered wooden structures and a single tavern that emitted a soft, welcoming glow against the encroaching twilight. Kadek's heart pounded as he approached, each step measured like the heartbeat of a man at the precipice of fate. Inside the main building, a low murmur of voices intertwined with the crackle of a central fire. There, behind a long oak table scarred by time, sat the settlement master, a man whose deep-set eyes bore the weight of countless lost fortunes and defiant hopes. Before the settlement master could utter inquiry, a soft, familiar melody reached Kadek's ears, a lullaby sung in a gentle, trembling voice that struck him like a long-forgotten chord. Turning quickly, he followed the sound into a dim corner of the tavern, where a woman sat hunched, her eyes a mixture of weariness and quiet determination. She clutched a small silver ring, its surface etched with distinct hawk emblem, a mirror to the token in Kadek's possession. The moment their eyes met, the past unfurled in a cascade of memory. "Alina?" Kadek breathed, his voice a blend of disbelief and yearning. The woman's eyes glistened with unshed tears as she whispered, "I have waited, always waiting, for the return of what was lost." In that hallowed reunion, both the bitter frost of their separation and the radiant hope of a shared destiny entwined. Lena stirred, her eyes fluttering open as if compelled by the bittersweet cadence of a long-remembered song. Recognizing the silver ring, a token that had been passed down as a symbol of promise between lovers, Lena's gaze darted to Alina with vibrant realization. "Mama," she uttered softly, the word hanging in the air like a benediction. But even as mother and daughter embraced, the celebratory moment was shadowed by the echoing threat of the frontier. Outside the trading post, the sharp clack of hooves and the distant cry of a settler patrol reminded them that the sanctuary they had found was as fragile as the ice on the river. The settlement master, his eyes dark with caution, leaned forward. "You must know," he intoned gravely, "there are those who would not allow this reunion, those who stand to gain from the separation of families, from the exploitation of histories. A tense murmur filled the room as both settlers and native kin braced for the next chapter of a story haunted by old wounds and new peril. Lena, though visibly weakened by her captivity and the harshness of her recent trials, summoned her fading strength to speak. "We must escape this cycle," she said, her voice trembling yet resolute. "Our family, though torn, is stronger in our union, but our enemies linger still." And so, as the glow of the tavern flickered in quiet defiance against the encroaching winter night, the promise of reunion and redemption hung delicately in the air, a promise tempered by the threat that even now, far beyond the safety of familiar lands, the storm of prejudice and greed was gathering momentum. The past and future converged in that silent exchange, leaving both kin and strangers with an unspoken understanding. The journey toward healing was only just beginning, and the next step might very well be their last chance of freedom. Night deepened into a cold, restless darkness as the settler patrol's threat, once so near and menacing, was forced to retreat. With a deft diversion orchestrated by Miko, a flash of fire and a burst of clamor echoing to the pines, the wary patrol split, leaving only one solitary pursuer to linger at the edge of the trading post. In that fraught moment, Kadek felt both the bitter sting of loss and the fierce heat of resolve ignite his soul. The reunion with Lena, though tender and miraculous, now came at a perilous moment. They must flee this place of constant danger in order to forge a new life far from the clutches of greed and prejudice. Lena, weakened yet unyielding, clutched the silver token that had long signified her forbidden love with Kadek, a delicate reminder of their shared past. Her features were etched by hardship. The sun and winter had worn them into a mask of both sorrow and quiet hope. Kadek gathered her gently, cradling her as though she were as fragile as Lena had once been when abandoned in the biting snow. Lena, her vigil lifted from fevered haze now replaced by a spark of resolve, clutched the woven band on her wrist, a symbol of the Shawnee kinship that had nurtured her. In that charged atmosphere, the trio, Kadek, Lena, and Lena, prepared to vanish into the wide wilderness. Before the final strike of dawn, as the wind howled its mournful dirge over frozen riverbanks and the crackle of distant fires whispered of pursuing foes, Miko guided them to a hidden passage, a narrow, rocky crevice carved into the hillside, known only to the tribe. Slipping into the cavernous refuge, they pressed themselves against cool stone walls where the scent of damp earth mixed with the fading aroma of cedar. The pursuer, thwarted by Miko's crafty diversion, was soon lost to the endless drifts of the Appalachian snow. Within the sanctuary of the cave, illuminated only by flickering starlight and the feeble glow of a tallow lamp, Kadek and Lena shared their stories in hushed tones. Lena, speaking between labored breaths, recounted the dark days when she had been imprisoned by settlers for aiding her people, a refusal to bow to injustice that had marked her as a blight in their eyes. It was during that long captivity that she had vowed never to allow tyranny to dictate her fate again. Kadek's own tale of solitary wandering, haunted by the memory of a love as fierce as fire yet lost in the bitter currents of prejudice, now converged with her own. In their soft murmurings, the legacy of the hawk token and the silver ring melded into a new promise, a vow both to each other and Lena, who lay nestled between them like a fragile blossom amid winter's cruelty. With the threat temporarily dispersed, Kadek led the trio out of the cavern and into the pre-dawn quiet. Their journey took them off the well-trodden paths, over rugged, frozen cliffs where every step was a testament to their determination, and through groves of towering cedars laden with ancient wisdom. The bitter wind, now a constant companion, carried with the scent of pine and the murmurs of spirits long past, whispers that seemed to bless their escape. Even as night reluctantly surrendered to a gray, awakening sky, Kadek's vision for a new future sharpened with every step. He spoke rarely, but his eyes shone with quiet promise. They were heading to a hidden valley, far removed from the settlers' reach, a place whispered about in tribal lore as a sanctuary where nature and kinship intertwined. After days of silent travel through a relentless winter, the landscape unfolded before them like a secret revealed. In a sheltered basin surrounded by high, snow-clad ridges and dense groves of cedar and pine, the hidden valley lay cradled in gentle stillness. Here, sunlight filtered through jagged clouds and muted golds and grays, igniting the frost with a soft radiance. It was a place where once barren ground could be coaxed into life by the hardy hands of those who value both heritage and hope, a promised land for a family recovering from the scars of the past. In the valley, the trio set to work building a home that would not only shelter them from the relentless winter, but also stand as a testament to their resilience. Kadek, his body weathered yet unwavering, arranged salvaged logs and driftwood into framework of a modest log shelter. Lena, with a voice that had once quavered like a distant song, recited healing prayers and invoked the blessings of the ancestors. Lena, ever the bright-eyed beacon, scouted the surroundings with a curious heart, picking wild herbs, testing the frozen ground, and humming the lullaby that had first soothed her in the Shawnee camp. As the days melted slowly into a quiet, productive rhythm, the family found solace in the natural cadence of the valley. They gathered around a central fire each evening, the yellow-orange flames dancing over their tired faces, as if to ward off the lingering shadows of their past. One starlit night, beneath a sky so vast and clear that every constellation seemed to tell a new chapter of their collective story, the family gathered for a solemn vow renewal, a ritual blending Shawnee tradition with the tender bonds of newfound kinship. The elders had taught Kadek the art of the starlit vow, a ceremony where promises were whispered to the heavens and witnessed by the silent spirits of the land. In that sacred moment, Lena's frail hand was clasped in Kadek's, and Lena, standing between them, placed her small palm upon both, with a braided cord, a new keepsake imbued with the essence of cedar and the memory of hope. Tied around their wrists, they pledged that no force would sever the ties that bound them. The cord, woven with care and purpose, symbolized both the hardship of their journey and the bright spark of their shared future. Time, as it is wont to do, flowed gently in the valley. A silence deepened into a profound peace over the course of 5 long years. The small log shelter expanded into a modest homestead, nestled amidst cultivated fields and shaded by stoic cedar groves. Lena, whose early trials had painted her with vulnerability and resilience alike, grew into a vibrant young woman. She began to teach local children the ancient stories of the Shawnee, blending her own experiences with the timeless legends passed down through generations. Her voice, once soft and tentative, blossomed into one of confident compassion. Kadek's once hardened exterior softened as daily life in the valley mended the wounds of the past. His protective gaze, ever watchful, now shone with quiet pride as he observed Lena weaving tales of survival and hope for the next generation. Lena, though still bearing the weight of her former trials, grew stronger with each new dawn, her eyes frequently wandering to the distant horizon, as if to ensure that the threats of the outside world remained mere shadows far behind them. Yet even in this peaceful enclave, the memory of that icy journey and the peril of the settler patrol lingered like a cautionary whisper. Occasionally, a chill wind or a stray sound reminded them that the world beyond their valley was still fraught with prejudice and hardship. But within the safety of their home, every shared smile and every whispered promise fortified their collective bond. On a particularly clear autumn evening, as the valley was bathed in the soft glow of twilight and the scent of pine mingled with the crisp, earthy aroma of fallen leaves, Lena discovered a small cedar carving hidden beneath a stone near the edge of the homestead. The delicate carving, etched into the smooth grain of the cedar, depicted a soaring hawk, its wings outstretched in silent majesty. Recognizing its uncanny resemblance to the hawk token that had once been Kadek's talisman of hope and loss, Lena felt a stirring within her chest. In that simple relic lay both the pain of the past and the promise of what the future could be. Carrying the cedar carving back to the hearth, Lena held it to her heart as if to absorb its ancient wisdom. In that quiet moment, she understood that their journey, from the biting cold of abandonment through the storm of distrust and danger to the warm sanctuary of the valley, had been guided by an unseen hand. The carving, like the braided cord that now bound their family together, was a tangible reminder that destiny was as much about forging one's own path as it was about embracing the legacy of those who came before. As the fire crackled softly and the voices of family rose in gentle laughter and song, Kadek and Lena exchanged a look filled with unspoken assurance. Each scar, each hardship had led them to this fragile, hopeful moment where love and resilience persevered. Their journey, tumultuous and fraught with danger, had ultimately become a testament to the timeless strength of faith and family. And so, beneath a celestial tapestry of shimmering starlight and the vigilant gaze of the ancient pines, the family found haven. In the hidden valley of their choosing, they forged a new chapter, one not defined by the shadows of the past, but illuminated by the resilient flame of redemption, hope, and boundless love. The gentle murmur of a lullaby, one that Lena had taught long ago, drifted across the valley like a promise. It was a soft refrain that held within it the echoes of survival and the whispered hope of a future filled with promise, gently beckoning any weary traveler to seek solace, and to remember that even in the deepest winter, spring's tender warmth would eventually prevail. And with that, as the night deepened and the valley slept in peaceful unity, the adventure, healing, renewal, and family continued, ever open-ended, like the boundless sky above,